Hello guys, how are we today? Been a few weeks, so thought see how everyone is. Do a little Q&A. Just checking out the bloodbath that's going on in crypto at the moment. All gone a little bit crazy. Nice bit of handbags on Twitter. Oh, Josh. All right. Yeah, thankfully the gold and silver and some of the stocks are sort of holding up quite well and not making up for all of the loss in crypto, but yeah, certainly helping out. A big polymetal and Vanek gold miners index doing pretty well. Yeah, start to be having the sort of defensive old world investments doing well. So yeah, fire in questions, whatever you're thinking, whatever you want to know. Hello, Ryan. I assume the sound is fine. All good? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem too much stock market news, really. FTSE seems sort of in a very slow up and down range. Dollar's getting a lot worse, so everyone's FX loss starts to look pretty bad on Trading 212. They remind you of that. But a good time to buy sort of US shares at the moment, and any sort of European or Asian shares. I know a lot of people don't really get into Asian shares like I do. But yeah, oil doing pretty well at the moment. And the gold, last sort of month or so, you're in the high sort of 1800s in April, and sort of even lower than that. Yeah, early March got under 1700. So yeah, 1870 nearly, 1869. Decent, but hopefully a long way to go. Josh. Polymetal, yes. At long last. I mean, it's been a fair old wait for polymetal. How are we doing on polymetal? 1674. Yeah, we keep getting these sort of 25 pence moves. But yeah, it's been very, very choppy, sort of up and down in the ranges sort of since February, since the highs. Yeah, last year, £20. Hopefully it's coming soon. You have to be patient. Yeah, and the not sure how the silver miners one is doing. not quite in that yet. Still chugging away, waiting to transfer the ISAs. Not heard too much from IG. So still with iWeb and Hargreaves Lansdowne at the moment. Bit of sort of slow movement, but the Silver Miners one's starting to look good. At the junior. Yeah, that's had a pump. But again, sort of very, very flat for months, really. Even going all the way back to sort of the gold highs in August. So expect this will wait and then sort of pump really hard when the silver miners go crazy. If, not necessarily when. Is Poly in the long-term pie? It's not. The long-term pie in the... I don't really have any gold and silver sort of on the stock side, individual stock side. I tend to just keep gold in the ETFs. So I've got the gold miners and the gold junior miners, and then I'm having the SIL and SILJ, sort of probably thinking 1.25% to all four of these. So yeah, that's the thinking at the moment, rather than holding individual ones. Invest with Darren, hello. Next crypto, I think we'll see a nice rise. Well, kind of all depends on Bitcoin, really. I can't imagine anything's going to go hugely popping off without Bitcoin. But yeah, in terms of sort of my holdings, I think certainly everything seems to be a little bit low. Probably most bullish on Cardano. Obviously I like Ethereum and some of the others, but I think Cardano sort of hasn't really had the pump that some of the others have had. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where that goes. Lancashire Holdings Insurance Company, not one that I've heard of. $1.6 billion. Not a lot to them though. I'm not really keen on some of these. They've got a little bit more, but not a whole lot of info. $80 million in free cash flow. I'm not all that into sort of the lesser known insurance companies and that sort of thing. I've got Aviva and Legal and General, so I quite like them. I wouldn't be looking to add sort of too many more. Hello Sadiq, what's happening with crypto? Crazy week. Are we going to go lower to high 30s? Well, could certainly do. Seeing sort of a load of news stories coming together. China sort of banning exchanges again. I mean, they've done this before. Yeah, sort of banning investment products. They're not actually banning anybody particularly from holding it, but just everyone getting in. Could go to high 30s though if all of this comes together and still keep getting, as I call it, handbags on Twitter between Elon and everyone else. But we'll see. Lancashire Holdings should perform well in a hardening market. Yeah, I kind of think sort of if they're going to perform well, the industry would perform well, really. I mean, Legal in General and Aviva are kind of sort of in the value range at the moment. Sort of very low PE, very low sort of price to free cash flow and decent balance sheet. So, yeah, interesting, but I'll stick with the better known guys. Josh, silver been choppy. Yeah, I notice you sort of get up and see a large rise, and then sort of towards the end of the UK day, it gets chopped down as expected. The London fix and the Americans sort of suddenly knock it down somehow. Hope it builds a floor at $28. I'd never sort of too keen on resistances and supports and that sort of thing. I think, you know, if you think crypto's manipulated, gold and silver are just the king of manipulation, really. Evening Westy. Darren, you think DOT will see a nice rise in the next 2 or 3 weeks? Interesting. I don't know if there's any sort of particular news with DOT. It's one that I'm not in. Obviously, the sort of Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot battle. I'm in Ethereum and Cardano because I was in Cardano sort of for the last few years, so didn't want to sort of hedge my bets and buy Polkadot as well. So yeah, it's interesting. Nothing against people who invest in Polkadot, obviously. Biggest single stock position, I think, is probably still Sylvania Platinum in the ISA. Aside from the polymetal, and yeah, that's just temporary while I'm waiting for transferring to IG. So biggest sort of proper position that I hold at the moment is still Sylvania Platinum. DOT along with Kusama. Not seen Kusama. Don't keep up to date on a lot of the sort of newer, the very new coins. Stevie, thoughts on Palantir? It's a hype stock as far as I'm concerned. I think a lot of people sort of buying it and probably would really struggle to even explain their business. $40 billion. I suppose you've got to have, you know, bullish thought on the long term. I mean, they're not exactly making any money at the moment. Yahoo gives them a sort of 50% a year growth for the next 5 years. Always wonder how accurate these things are with sort of newer companies. You know, can't really say smaller companies because they're 40 billion. But yeah, price targets are sort of basically where they are now. It's not exactly great, and in May they've all turned to sell, the analysts. So yeah, I can't even explain what they do. They look pretty expensive. So I kind of leave this technology sort of growth side well away for now. Maybe if we have a crash, then we'll see. Have I got any positions in EV charging stations? No, I'm not really that keen on sort of the EV specific stocks. Again, a lot sort of seems priced in. I think a lot of the people sort of investing in this stuff don't mean to cause any offence, but people seem to think they're the only one who sort of has the idea that EVs are going to be big in the future. Yeah, they sort of kind of lump it in with things like EasyJet and British Airways and that sort of thing. You know, a lot of people obviously think EVs are the future, and they're sort of trying to go for anything that is going to be either the cars or the infrastructure or anything. So no, I'm not particularly keen. Josh, still tempted to get into Admiral. Yeah, I've seen this, seen sort of a few mentions of them on Discord. Not 100% sort of convinced, really. Speedbird, how do you remain disciplined in your investing strategy and not quick to sell for a small profit? I tend to, I'm trying to sort of build up a larger spreadsheet sort of based on these holdings, for example, and sort of have the sort of forward PE ratios and that sort of thing, and sort of set, if I come up with a base forward PE that I think each of these is worth, and then sort of obviously if the price goes up and the earnings go up, then PE will stay the same. So you might be 50% up maybe on a really good pick, but the forward PE might stay the same if earnings have gone up. So I think sort of more time to sell would be if it sort of rockets up without justification. So if it goes a certain amount beyond my sort of target forward PE, then I would sort of think about maybe trimming it down, maybe not sell the whole thing. Kind of thinking of sort of some of these companies maybe getting to that sort of stage now. I'm sort of quite up on 3M. Earnings haven't gone up drastically. I think forward PE sort of over 20 now, and they're not really growing a huge amount. So yeah, that sort of thing. If it's going too far above valuation, would be sort of when I would think to take profits. Hello Inkmatic, thoughts on ALBT? Not one I've seen. Where are we? I don't hold a huge amount of small caps. I've taken a few punts. So we're at 400 in the rankings. I've only got two sort of outside the top 200, my little sort of punts on Binance. So yeah, I've never heard of it. Don't really sort of see it on the sort of news or any of the Discord chat. No, have to enlighten us on that one. Hello Ed, thoughts on what crypto will look like in 10 years? I think it's too far ahead to look, to be honest. It's 10 years old and it's changed, dramatically in the last sort of 5 years even. We had basically no institutional involvement sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago. So yeah, we could end up with it replacing the banking system and replacing sort of worldwide remittance companies and that sort of thing. But I think it's a little bit too sort of pie in the sky to be looking that far ahead, to be honest. It could all blow up and we're back to central bank digital pounds and dollars and that sort of thing, and crypto gets wiped off. Water's Edge, hello, seeing you in the comments. What's the biggest loss I've taken and what did I learn from it? Probably the two big losses I took were quite early in the ISA. Well, I've had one, the biggest loss would be Into Properties because they went bust. But the sort of big losses would be IAG, British Airways and Rolls-Royce. I sort of underestimated how much the debt situation was going to affect them, and both of them ended up I was in them around the time of the rights issues, and obviously they sort of dropped quite a bit on that, and I wasn't very happy with sort of piling more money into them to try and lower my average to take advantage of the rights issues. So I think I sort of took a loss of, I don't know, 30-40% on them. They weren't huge positions, so it's not I wouldn't say a speculative punt. I did think they were going to do all right, but yeah, that'd be sort of 30-40%. I think it's probably the biggest one that I've sold for a loss. I've got bigger current losses at the moment, some sort of in the ARC pie and that sort of thing, but they're individual ones. I tend to look at the pie as a whole. But yeah, lesson learned, I suppose, would be do more research on sort of debt and the cash runways, as they call it, when they're going to need to start raising funds, and whether they would do it through debt or rights issues. Thanks, Tom. Stevie, yeah. No probs. Do agree with the narrative that ETH will take over BTC. I've seen a lot of people talking about that. I mean, we nearly got there in 2017. There was talks of sort of by the end of the bull market, ETH would be higher. I think ETH obviously does a lot more. If we are getting towards Bitcoin basically being digital gold and not a huge amount more, then yeah, it probably does have its limits. ETH obviously can sort of have a hell of a lot of stuff built on top of it, with the sort of ETH2 scaling and some of the things that they've got planned for the next few years. And obviously you've got other tokens that are trying to take the load off Ethereum, not really sort of trying to take them down. I think a lot of coins are basically accepting ETH is going to be dominant and trying to sort of help out and take a piece of the pie by helping out. But yeah, so sort of digital gold, if you think gold has $10 trillion market cap, I think long term maybe Ethereum could be more than that. Any thoughts on copper over the next few years? Fairly bullish on copper in general. Obviously gets used in a lot of infrastructure and just sort of general inflation, really. I think copper should do well. I haven't seen any particular copper miners that I was that keen on. I've sort of obviously got some exposure in Rio Tinto and BHP, but there's obviously things like Southern Copper and one or two sort of more specific miners. But I haven't seen anything in particular that I would go for. I wouldn't start speculating in sort of futures and that sort of thing as well. I would sort of stick to companies on that sort of thing. Westy, what type of stock seems to perform best for you? Growth stocks, value, or dividend paying stocks? I've had some small sort of short term gains on growth stocks, but I'm never that keen, and I sort of get a bit wary. Sort of made 100% I think with Tesla, sold out at sort of $750, and it went up slightly, but obviously has then come down and is still well below that. So I tend to sort of think value stocks, hold on to them for a little while, and obviously some of my sort of decent picks are up 30-40%. And obviously I've got things like the Bitcoin ETP and that sort of thing, but that's just Bitcoin. That's probably my highest gain position, but that doesn't really count, I wouldn't think. But yeah, I tend to sort of go for value. That'll be it going forward, I think. Will I stick with my existing selling strategy if BTC keeps dropping? I won't be probably selling any more crypto for a little while if we're staying around this area. I was considering selling some of the altcoins a little more. You know, I was happy with sort of altcoins making all-time highs with Bitcoin not doing too much, and I was selling out some of the altcoins. But if everything's down, probably not selling anything just yet. So yeah, there won't be a huge amount going into stocks for the next little while if this all carries on. Just sort of monthly salary investment, sort of 750 quid, maybe £1,000 most months. Ed, great answer. That's probably my biggest barrier to crypto investing so far. Yeah, where it's sort of going to be, if you're thinking long term, where's it going to be in 10 years? I think if you're investing in even sort of 5 years, then you've got to be prepared to take the next sort of severe bear market into consideration. If assuming it sort of happens even somewhat similar to before, then you've got to sort of think we may get a top if we're not in it already. If it goes to, say, 100k, you know, you could get maybe not 85% like we've had before drops, but maybe 50 or 60%, because the institutions will sell. They're not hodlers like the general public. So yeah, if you're investing for 5 years, say, it could go up, drop, you know, could go up for another 6 months, drop 60%, and then sort of slowly consolidate and go up, you know, 2024 to 2025 time maybe. So yeah, it'd be a rocky ride if you were to hold for that sort of time. What's my highest conviction stock in my current portfolio? Yeah, the largest position is Sylvania Platinum, but I wouldn't say it's highest conviction because I'm not sort of intending to hold it all that long term because of the obviously EVs and moving away from petrol and diesel, so platinum won't be needed quite as much. So I don't know, in terms of sort of long-term holds, I sort of said before probably Disney and Nintendo, to be honest. I think they're brands that I really like, I've always liked. So I had them as sort of top of my my pie when I had it as a pie. I haven't really sort of gone for the pie approach anymore because I didn't really want to. Like, I don't own any Disney at the moment. Because it just seems a little bit too high. You know, it's coming down now. I might have to just bite the bullet on Disney at some point. But yeah, I mean, if it was a sort of reasonable price, I think probably if they hadn't got into streaming quite so much, we wouldn't have seen this run up, and I would have been more happy to invest in Disney. I was quite happy with the business as it was. I liked the sort of film side, you know, the cinema side, and yeah, I've always thought that made a lot of money. Obviously Marvel and Star Wars and that sort of thing, they all make a fortune at the box office, and yeah, I think the obviously streaming has put them a little bit out of reach now, but probably Disney and Nintendo would be my high conviction positions, maybe not absolute highest. Ryan, what key things do you look at when analysing the fundamentals? As I say, I know a lot of people don't sort of put too much stock into it, but I'm a big fan of sort of forward PEs. I know you're working off analysts and expectations and that sort of thing, but yeah, you sort of Obviously, we're looking at, someone like Palantir. It's not going to look good, but yeah, you sort of take, $21 with the sort of rough estimates of the next coming year. Obviously, at the moment, if you look at trailing PEs, the headline PE you'll see on, Yahoo's front page is trailing 12 months, so that'll include COVID times and lost times and that sort of thing. So normally to get a better indication, you'd look at sort of forward PEs. So I tend to sort of take that into consideration, and sort of you can do some checks just to see sort of if they're a steady company. You can do checks on previous sort of cash flow, just check they're not hiding sort of something in their earnings. Obviously forward PE is based on earnings per share, so yeah, free cash flow can be sort of a more accurate measurement. So if price to free cash flow sort of looks similar to the forward PE, then that's always a good sign. Also, obviously like to see a fairly healthy balance sheet. So ideally you'd want sort of a reasonable amount of cash to be able to pay off all current liabilities, and then sort of see how much cash they can pay off their long-term debt. And some companies even, just the cash will pay off total liabilities. So then that's obviously a huge green flag. Sort of look at general things on the income statement, net profit, EBITDA, and have a good look through the balance sheet, and maybe have a look through their sort of annual reports, see if anything jumps out at you. Sadiq, will there be a crash on altcoins anytime soon if BTC starts to bounce back to 60s and Bitcoin dominance increases back again? I think if Bitcoin bounces back to the 60s, then I think altcoins would sort of go with them. I tend to think they wouldn't crash, they just wouldn't. If Bitcoin, jumps up really fast, then the altcoins tend to sort of drag a little bit. They'll go up, but I think they don't go up quite as fast as Bitcoin. And then when Bitcoin starts to sort of go back into steady growth, the altcoins would then probably sort of outperform. Obviously, you'll get spikes in individual ones on the days, but I think in the general, you'll get a sort of big move from Bitcoin, and then when it starts to slow down, then you sort of get the pop in altcoins then. So I don't think you'd see a crash. But yeah, normally, in the last cycle, we sort of, this was near enough the top when you start seeing 40% Bitcoin dominance, but obviously you've had a growth in a huge amount of altcoins, and obviously more coming online and taking up a larger portion, so maybe 40% dominance isn't that bad. If the industry's maturing and Bitcoin is just digital gold, then I think you're going to see lower dominance for Bitcoin. Simon, why do we choose Argo and not Mara or Riot? Well, I think Mara, I've had a look at Mara and Riot before. They don't seem to mine all that much more Bitcoin than Argo, and the sort of market cap's 5 times Argo's from memory. Sort of trailing revenues look pretty poor, to be honest, but I sort of had a read up of them a few times, and they sort of, 2.18 billion. They've obviously had a fair drop over the last few months. They were sort of in the 50s and 60s, so they've had more of a drop. I think at one point they were sort of 4 or 5 times the market cap of Argo. I know Riot and Argo, I think, hold more Bitcoin on the balance sheet, but yeah, they've sort of got, as far as I'm aware, they've got lower margins. They don't make quite as much profit per Bitcoin mined, and they're not sort of mining, multiples of Argo's capacity. Again, I've sort of read that the Mara and Riot are expanding maybe more than Argo, but yeah, I think with Argo's new sort of Texas site, they can be expanding more, and yeah, it just seems a little bit better prospect. I think the sort of American crypto enthusiasm goes into things like Riot and Mara, and yeah, there's less enthusiasm in the UK. So obviously with Argo being an OTC pink sheet stock at the moment, it just doesn't get the love in America. If it gets listed on the NASDAQ, I think sort of people will compare it to Riot and Mara, and then yeah, you could see sort of an appreciation then. So I think it just has that extra sort of built-in potential upside. What do you think about Palantir? Yeah, that was asked before. Not really one for me. Sort of can't explain the stock, and yeah, a little bit too high growth for me. So not really one for me. Thanks for the information, Ryan. No problem, Ryan. As I say, I'm sort of relatively new to the individual stock analysis game. I know obviously it's a large portfolio, but a lot of that has come from sort of crypto, and I did start with about 40,000 in cash that I'd sort of saved up over a number of years. I was using it in an offset mortgage account, so yeah, decided to sort of take that out and put it in stocks. So obviously starting with 40k, it was a lot easier to sort of build up. Yeah, how long have I been investing? I started in March 2019. So I sort of took that 40,000 either side of that ISA year, 20k in March and 20k in sort of late April, May time. Put all of that in to pretty much gold and silver miners, and sort of that's where the Hargreaves Lansdown and iWeb sort of part of my portfolio has come from, and then sort of went from there. And a lot of it has come from crypto. So yeah, obviously the portfolio, makes you think I've been in this for years and years, but yeah, I've still obviously got a lot to learn, and hoping to do that as we go. Investing certainly isn't my main income. No, I don't take any of the sort of dividends or anything out. Everything gets reinvested, and yeah, I've got a job in the construction industry. Stevie, as a new investor, what's the best advice you can give me? I mean, I may not be the best person to ask because I'm very sort of pessimistic on the market and very defensive, but personally I'm sort of going quite defensive on sort of value stocks at the moment, and sort of saying diversify basically. A lot of sort of people will say to new investors, you want to sort of pick a small number of stocks and focus on them really hard, and sort of know what you're in. But I sort of prefer to diversify maybe when you don't know quite as much, or maybe even just go for ETFs while you're sort of learning, and maybe do some of the sort of free courses, things like Sven Carlin's course does quite a sort of comprehensive stock research course. So you could say put your money into, you know, just a balanced all-world tracker, and maybe be sort of working through that course at the same time, and then sort of move on to individual stocks after sort of doing a bit more research. But yeah, sort of main advice would be patient with it, and try not to get caught up in hype and growth stocks. YouTube can be sort of very tempting. You see the sort of 10x and 100x, will this 10x within a week type stuff. I'd sort of stay clear of that, or at least take it with a pinch of salt. Sort of temper your expectations, and don't sort of, if you build people are building little pies in Trading 212, and sort of it'll tell you, you can make 50% a year in this pie because it has done for the last few years. Sort of obviously the last few years have been unusual to say the least, so just take some of the return expectations with a pinch of salt. Simon, what stocks am I buying next? Difficult to say. A lot of sort of looking at reasonable value. If I sort of had some reasonable money, just sort of looking through my watch list, kind of thought Broadcom was a decent price. I'd say Baidu I would probably be buying a little bit more of, although they were quite a bit lower. They've sort of come up now. As I say, may bite the bullet on Disney. Start off sort of not pile into it, just start off a modest position. Taiwan Semiconductor, again, sort of looking fairly cheap. I know it's a growth stock, so I have to force myself to ignore the forward PE. Still like Process. Lennar maybe. Yeah, that's sort of ones I'm looking at the moment. Can't help keep piling into Nintendo. Yeah, that'd probably be some that I'll be looking. Sadiq, favourite top 5 altcoins if I were to pick today? Obviously not financial advice, as they all say. These are just my opinion. I would say have a little balance between sort of Ethereum, Cardano. Do quite like OMG Network, or Amise Go as it used to be called. They're sort of taken as if they're one of the ones sort of trying to ease the load on Ethereum and just sort of take a little piece of that pie. I quite like Basic Attention Token, sort of the Brave browser, sort of gaining popularity and seems to have a good model. And maybe the sort of my little small cap punt Power Ledger does sort of move erratically, but with sort of green future seems to have a good model. So yeah, there's a few to think about. What do I think of Tesla at these prices? I know it's sort of obviously tempting if it's come down a fair way, but still it's expensive for me. You sort of look at expectations for the next few years. I mean, even next year, obviously you're looking at say $580. Even if Yahoo's expectations are very low, maybe they get $8 earnings next year. You look at 72 forward PE even after this sort of so-called crash, and I'm not paying 72 for any company, for not even the forward PE, the 1 year forward PE. So yeah, I think far too much is still priced in, unless you think the analysts are drastically wrong. Brian, you're also in the construction industry looking for a way out. Yes, not the best industry at the moment. Sadiq, will I go all into crypto or stocks or 50-50 if I was to start today? Well, probably balance, I always say balance. I think new investors getting into crypto sort of 100% or, even as heavy as I am into crypto, you could see sharp drops and people may get shaken out of the market. I'm sort of got used to this and had a rough few years, so it's been, a rough time to go through, and some people could just end up selling the low if they haven't sort of got that conviction or just strong enough stomach, as I call it. So yeah, I would maybe sort of keep it to a smaller amount crypto if you're risk averse. If you think you can stomach it, then yeah, maybe 50-50. It's an interesting mix to sort of go with, value and defensive stocks and then crypto. But I sort of see that as the crypto is instead of, a lot of the growth stocks and tech stocks and that sort of thing. I prefer crypto to them. Stevie, great advice. We'll have a look into the course. Yeah, I think it's worth doing. It seems a little bit time consuming. It's quite long. So I haven't done it myself. I do need to sort of find some time and get going with it. Kind of been almost winging it, I'll say, the last sort of year or so. But I think it's a great point to start with. T, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? It's a little bit rough at the moment. Where are we? I did bring up the these sort of couple of charts from before. Obviously we're sort of 20 high 20s, 30% down, and we had this all in 2017. And I keep sort of saying, on various sort of Discords and on YouTube, the stories and developments that we had when we had these drops, I would say arguably were worse than we're getting now. You sort of had, major hacks of exchanges and that sort of thing, and bans. I think obviously you had China and sort of other people looking to ban it, talking about banning it, and that's sort of partly what caused some of these drops. And sort of late in the year, I think it was late 2017, we sort of had the Bitcoin Cash fork controversy and everything that went with that. So, there were sort of talks about the whole Bitcoin network splitting and, being ruined. So compare that to a little bit of bum fighting with on Twitter, and like I say, I do think people are underplaying the potential sort of rejection of the US ETFs and funds. SEC have sort of hinted that they may be rejecting them, whether that's partly down to Tesla and Elon and all the activities over the last couple of weeks. Not too sure. I think it sort of, there was a mention of manipulation and volatility sort of before all of this even kicked off, so I think there was a hint that they're going to be delaying the decision and then maybe delaying it again and then rejecting them. So that would obviously be a big blow. But yeah, not, devastating bad news. I haven't seen anything at all to sort of that would be negative on the network itself, other than sort of environmental concerns. So yeah, thoughts are still pretty fine, really. He had some Wi-Fi problems. No worries, Josh. Welcome back. What do I think about AGNC? Is that one of the sort of Main Street Capital type high dividend payers. Don't know a huge amount about this sort of thing. Yeah, 8%. I've seen this one before a couple of times. Never really sort of looked into it all that much. So sort of 8% dividend, you almost don't need price appreciation. But yeah, they have been getting it. Obviously on the longer term, yeah, 5 years you're still down. But if you get 8% a year, I kind of think, I'd be sort of looking for, 7 or 8% as a minimum, really, with the hope that they do get more than that. I sort of say if I sort of go semi-retired and live off the portfolio, then I'll be looking at hopefully 7% across the board to live off, but with the hope that I may get more than that, so then in the rough times, you won't need to earn that, obviously. So yeah, the sort of these guaranteed almost 7% dividends with basically no price appreciation, I'm always a little bit wary of. Yeah, so I mean, you're going back to even, the recession, you sort of give it late 2008 and you're still down. So yeah, not all that keen on this sort of thing. I know some people go for it, I think, just because they're a monthly payer. Good news, Josh. Barrett's have a load of live new build projects in the pipeline, more than any house builder. That sounds good. Sounds good. More house building in the UK. We need it. You can't build enough, can they? So, big up Barrett's and Taylor Wimpey. So rejection of the ETF will be the start of the bear market. I don't think it'd be the start of the bear market. I just think it'd be a blow. Sort of, I think maybe in the run-ups, you sort of, I think there's like 8 or 9 ETFs in application, and obviously they're sort of fairly big players, Fidelity and VanEck and people like that. So I think the thinking was, if these big players are applying for it, maybe they've got some inside, an inside whisper that they're going to get approved. And the sort of thinking seemed to be that they wouldn't accept one of them and sort of reject others if they, to sort of get competition. If they accepted one, they would accept all of them. So I guess by the same token, you'd think if they would reject one or two, then they would probably reject all of them. So yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily need them. Obviously you have things like Grayscale, Bitcoin Trust, and other things like that, but institutions can get round and invest in crypto anyway. But I just think it would have been a boost, obviously, to get them, and maybe some of that was priced in, starting to get priced in when we were going up to sort of 50s and 60s. And obviously it's only a rumour, they haven't been rejected, it's just been delayed, but yeah, maybe some of that is sort of people are having second thoughts. How many years have I been trading, and where did I educate myself on the stock market? I've kind of sort of learnt bits and pieces all over, Discord and YouTube and that sort of thing. Read a lot online on various sort of websites, learning what different things were on the balance sheet. But as I say, I think I probably do need to just dedicate a little bit more time and go and do some of at least the free courses. So I've been doing this 2 years. March just over 2 years, March 2019. And sort of a lot of that point was just basically in gold funds because I was very bullish on gold. So yeah, really just started with the individual stocks sort of in the last year or so. Simon, best high dividend stock. I don't really go for sort of high dividend and and not a lot else. As I say, you know, we're sort of obviously looking at this AGNC. I mean, I like Legal and General. They're a sort of, you know, 7% or so payer, but I think they've also got potential upside as well. You know, sort of reasonable PEs and sort of potential, you know, for price appreciation as well as that sort of obviously now 6% dividend. But yeah, I wouldn't like to be sort of just relying on a high dividend. I know some of the REITs and that sort of thing have, you know, reasonably high. A couple of the ones I'm in have sort of reasonably high dividend and maybe not a huge amount of appreciation, but yeah, I tend to like sort of things that have at least a little bit of appreciation. So yeah, maybe something like Legal and General, or a couple of the REITs that I'm in, the care home REITs that I'm in, Target and Impact Healthcare, have got reasonably high yields, but with I would say price appreciation. With sort of the UK care home industry just seems a money grabber in the UK. So yeah, maybe something like that. Josh, hopefully more houses will make it easier to get on the ladder. I wouldn't hold your breath, to be honest. I would love to be a landlord someday. 300k. Yeah, that is a little bit rough. I'm in the cheaper part of Britain, but still not all that keen on being a landlord. If you saw my buy-to-let versus REITs video a long while ago, that sort of basically hasn't changed. Still kind of summarises my my thoughts on REITs and buy-to-lets. I just think REITs are the lazy man's alternative, basically. When you sort of break everything down, taxes and maintenance and all that sort of thing, the buy-to-lets just don't seem all that worth it. And if you don't want to deal with the, you know, the day-to-day sort of bother, then you hand it over to a management company and then you lose even more money. So, yeah, I think you take the sort of total return you can expect over like 25-year life of the property, sort of compared to what you can get in stocks while sat on your backside, then I just don't think it's worth it, to be honest. But yeah, would be quite happy to see a drop in prices. I am a homeowner, but I'd be looking to sort of move up. It'd be nice to get a sort of a nice flat, maybe. Yeah, so if I'm moving up, then you want prices to come down. Yeah, so I'll give it a few more minutes, see if anybody else got any questions, and may leave it there. Interesting seeing all the streaming boys starting to gang up on each other. Amazon looking to buy MGM now. They're all sort of trying to get as much content as possible. I've never been. I've always had AT&T on my watch list, and sort of thought of them as, you know, an interesting backbone of a business with the HBO side as growth. And now they're sort of spinning that off. So I expect that spun off company will probably end up as just a high PE growth company. So not really one I'd want to get into, and don't really want to get into Amazon. So yeah, maybe Disney is my only play into the streaming wars if I do get it. Didn't realise MGM would be 9 billion though. James Bond and sort of a load of other stuff. Could be an interesting buy. You remember that video? Yeah, you know, of course, diversification and that sort of thing. Obviously, stocks can go belly up. Having a real brick and mortar is a nice sort of safe, steady income. But yeah, I'm forever getting told to look into buy-to-lets being in construction. Stevie, medical trust properties type. I have heard medical trust properties mentioned quite a lot. Can't remember the ticker. Medical Properties Trust. Yeah, sort of 5% yield, say. I take it this is sort of a care home type one. I tend to go for the UK care home side because it just seems to be a little bit more stable, sort of NHS funded and partly NHS funded, and then people pay obviously on top. I'm not all that keen on the sort of US health insurance, Medicare and that side of things. I don't know a huge amount about it, but yeah, I just prefer the sort of UK healthcare side of things. So probably wouldn't go for something like this. And if you're getting a similar sort of return, but then you're losing withholding tax, presume you get held withholding tax on these as well. When the dividend is a large part of the return, you then lose 15% of that. It's a bit of a hit. So yeah, for that sort of thing, I generally prefer UK ones. How much did I start with when I first started, and how much yield do I tend to go for? So yeah, I started, as I say, sort of in March 2019. I sort of had about 40,000 saved up in cash, earning basically 2.8%, offsetting my mortgage. So I thought I could get better than that. Yeah, so I went into stocks with that, and sort of gone from there. How much yield? 10 or 20% yield? Not, I take it you mean in return sort of per year. I'd be generally sort of cautiously aiming for 7 to 10% really. If we get into a really sort of hot inflationary environment, then you're probably going to need more than that just to live, if you were living off the portfolio. So maybe sort of 10 to 15% if we're in heavy inflation times. But yeah, sort of in normal times, I would say 7 to 10% total return, sort of appreciation and dividends combined, would be pretty good. Sort of sets you up for, if you can get closer to 10%, sets you up for any sort of down periods. If you've had a good few years, then you can sort of move to more towards defensive stocks and gold and that sort of thing, and hopefully weather a downturn. So yeah, I wouldn't be, going super heavy. Final question, Sadiq. Any final thoughts on Bitcoin for the next 3 to 6 months? I'm still kind of bullish. As I say, sort of, you go back to the big chart, we could be in, one of these severe dips. We could even be back here, on this type of move if we're going to have a similar uptrend, even remotely similar to 2017. Might not go quite as high, obviously I'm sort of thinking 100k as the top, maybe 150k as a very bullish top. So yeah, if we're sort of on one of these corrections, you can have a few months. This was nearly 6 months of flat from top to breaking the top. So yeah, we might have a couple of month consolidation maybe. Don't know, if we don't get a lot of bullish news over the next couple of months, and yeah, then it could sort of go higher. I think with sort of, as you say, 3 to 6 months, we should be a fair bit higher, I would think, sort of end of the year. Yeah, and looking at the stock to flow, I do keep an eye on this, even though People say it's a load of rubbish, but you've only got to look at how well it's kept to it, and sort of this cycle. So since the halving, it's kept up reasonably well, and you sort of have, you know, the 100k target sort of towards August, September time. I think back in 2017 it sort of lagged a little bit and didn't quite get there by the exact date, and then sort of way overshot it to the sort of 20k price in 2017. So we could get, you know, it could sort of lag a little bit, come into, you know, later on in the year, and then sort of shoot through maybe even up to 200k or something. But yeah, so next, I mean, it could wait 3 to 6 months, it could go sort of longer towards the end of the year, but yeah, I think we should be higher than here in 6 months. Elon did say he'll be reinvesting when Bitcoin has a more environmentally efficient way of producing, and you can buy pretty much anything from supercars. I'm really not sure about this. I mean, you know, he's saying it's got worse in the last couple of months, and he's sort of showing a couple of charts and that sort of thing, that mining hash power has gone up and, you know, the impact has gone up, but it was the most polluting coin. It's clearly the most polluting coin when he bought it. I think he's sort of trying to backtrack and say, you know, it was other people maybe who were, you know, in the discussions to buy it, and he maybe wasn't that involved. But he was tweeting about it long before they bought it. So yeah, I find it hard to believe he didn't know it was sort of obviously the most polluting coin out of them all. It's the coin with the biggest adoption, so I imagine if the other coins had similar adoption, then obviously their hash power would go up if they're proof of work coins. But yeah, if you wanted a completely green coin, then you could go for proof of stake coins or things like Ripple, XRP, you know, uses practically no power. So yeah, to sort of say, you know, play the green card when it was the most polluting coin when he bought it, seems a little bit strange. I can't imagine they invested $1.5 billion without doing sort of a reasonable amount of research. So yeah, a bit strange. Great vids as always. Thanks for your time and advice tonight. No probs, Stevie. Hope it's of some help. I know I'm not probably as bullish as a lot of the people you see on YouTube, so yeah, apologies if I'm not the ray of hope that you may want to see, but it's probably good to have an opposing view, give you a balanced view. Thank you, Sadiq. All good. Alright, I shall probably leave it there and head off. Last quick look at CoinMarketCap. 25% down for the 7 days on Bitcoin. It be rough. You're trying to keep it safe. Main holding is Apple and legal in general. That's interesting. Interesting pair. Thank you, T. Yes, I shall head off and see you guys soon.